Here is Immortal Moments for explanation. Friends, like videos and subscribes to our channel. Swallowed Star 2 Land of Origin Part 112 Explanation. So let's start our explanation. The surrounding Blood Sea was vast and magnificent. Luo Feng gazed ahead. Even though he could clearly sense the Blood Crane territory origin right in front of him, no observational method could detect it. Is it real, or is it an illusion? Luo Feng followed the mysterious fluctuations, delving deep into the enigmatic changes, gradually catching a glimpse of the Blood Crane territory origin. This origin, in terms of size, is tiny, smaller than any matter. Yet, in terms of influence, it radiates throughout the entire Blood Crane territory. Is this the Blood Crane territory origin? As he followed the mysterious changes, delving deeper, the enigmatic transformation of the entire Blood Crane territory origin gradually manifested in Luo Feng's mind. This was a more grandiose and complex structure than the source world origin. He's definitely probing the Blood Crane territory origin. From afar, Blood Lord, Crane Lord, and Shadow Lord saw this scene. Though it's not apparent to outsiders, they vaguely understood. This cultivator Lord Luo Feng must have already delved deep into the Blood Crane territory origin. His mastery of life direction surpasses mine, and he definitely can probe the Blood Crane territory origin. Blood Lord was rather unwilling. Are we just going to let him explore? Let him attempt to refine it. Shadow Lord couldn't help but say. Can you stop him? Crane Lord glanced at him. It's all because you provoked the cultivator camp. I have always said, do not provoke the three major camps. You insisted, bringing about such a big trouble. Shadow Lord also felt suppressed. Though his frontal combat skills are inferior, unable to stand against any lord from the cultivator side, he can transform into myriad forms, omnipresent, confident that the lords cannot kill him. Additionally, with the mysterious world of Blood Crane territory as his hometown, he naturally had the confidence. Who would have thought that Luo Feng started trying to probe and refine the Blood Crane territory origin? Let's take action and try. Blood Lord, watching with some agitation, couldn't help but say, try every possible method to see if we can stop him. Let's give it a go first. Although Crane Lord and Shadow Lord had little confidence, they really didn't want to see the Blood Crane territory origin refined and controlled by Luo Feng. Boom tilde 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 tilde. The Blood Sea surged once again, with Blood Lord, Crane Lord, and Shadow Lord merging into the Blood Sea, carrying the endless power of the Blood Sea, the three highest level forces coordinating to attack Luo Feng. They tried everything they could. However, among the three of them, the highest level powers they mastered were one of life, one of undying power, and one of shadow. They were all very strong in terms of self-preservation but weak in attacking the enemy. Really noisy. Luo Feng sat cross-legged, protected by a layer of protective energy, repelling all attacks around. Now that there was no need to rush, it was quite easy to resist. Even with the joint effort of the three lords of the Blood Crane territory and relying on the power of the Blood Sea, they could not break through Luo Feng's protective energy layer. Occasionally, the Crane Lord could barely penetrate the protective energy layer a bit, causing some superficial wounds. Go? Luo Feng let them attack at will, occasionally releasing 3.6 billion origins to let them taste what it's like to be attacked. Only after a brief moment of siege did the three lords of the Blood Crane territory stop. It's useless. Even if 30 to 50 ancestors of the innate primordial camp joined forces, they couldn't destroy Luo Feng. How could we possibly deal with him? Crane Lord looked unwillingly at the black-clothed, black-haired man sitting cross-legged. Luo Feng, in the core area of the Blood Crane territory, sat cross-legged in the Blood Sea, carefully probing the Blood Crane territory origin. The three lords of the Blood Crane territory could only watch helplessly. He only excels in the power of life. Blood Lord said, the Blood Crane territory origin contains three highest level forces, merely comprehending one highest level force isn't enough to refine it. He comprehends the primordial level Tao, much more powerful than you, elder brother. Crane Lord said. Even if he is more formidable than me, merely mastering one force is still not enough to refine it. Blood Lord said. Right. Don't worry. Even after spending endless years, we three couldn't refine it. How could Lord Luo Feng possibly refine it? Besides, the cultivator camp has many affairs, and his main battle avatar couldn't possibly stay here indefinitely. Shadow Lord immediately said. Blood Lord and Crane Lord glanced at Shadow Lord. The encroachment of the cultivator territory was entirely Shadow Lord's unilateral decision. This Luo Feng. At this moment, Shadow Lord was a bit regretful. If he had known about the cultivator camp's communication, he would have retreated obediently, avoiding this trouble. If Luo Feng truly refined the Blood Crane territory, his responsibility would be enormous. After all, without his provocation. Cultivator Lord Luo Feng had just broken through and already had many affairs, so it was unlikely for him to invade the depths of the Blood Crane family territory without reason. Luo Feng sat cross-legged in the endless blood sea, a wisp of thought probing the Blood Crane territory origin. So, this is the full picture of the Blood Crane territory origin. After spending half a day, Luo Feng finally glimpsed the full picture of the origin. The Blood Crane territory origin, with a mystical perfect combination of life force, undying power, and shadow power, eventually transformed into a complete origin. How to form an origin? Luo Feng had already researched deeply before stepping out of the braided cage. The core of his primordial life and death Tao is the origin system, with 1.8 billion origins within his body. Although he didn't understand the undying power and shadow power, Luo Feng could distinguish the difference between the two. After half a day, he probed the method of combining the three forces into an origin. To refine the Blood Crane territory origin, one at least needs to perfectly master one of the highest level forces. And also understand how the three combine into an origin. Then, one can trace the vines to thoroughly refine the origin. Or, comprehend two of the highest level forces. Then the origin can be easily refined. Luo Feng determined the refinement plan. For me, the first path suits better. I already understand how the three combine into the origin. Now what I need is to fully master this one life force. Although Luo Feng comprehended the primordial life and death Tao, the blend of 7 parts life and 3 parts destruction did not constitute a pure life path. For Luo Feng, mastering this form of life power is not difficult. Before breaking free from the braided cage, Luo Feng's comprehension, mental processing speed, and insight were much weaker than they are now. Yet, he could still forcefully comprehend the primordial life and death Tao. Now, as a lord, the comprehension was still in the direction of life, which had the deepest accumulation, without needing to comprehend a complete primordial life Tao, but just a form of life power. One must know that when Luo Feng arrived at the Blood Crane territory, with just a slight perception, he had already glimpsed 70 to 80% of this life power. Pure life does not pursue the perfect control of every portion of power but seeks the ultimate bloom of life, the more, the better. It's not even in a physical form but transforms into a blood sea form, with an immensely large body. Luo Feng understood this path. This path, if I create a primordial level Tao. With this Tao constructing the physical body, the body can transform into a vast blood sea. The size of it is, perhaps, larger than the giant God Emperor. Naturally far surpassing Wulan. It could be considered the largest being in the endless primordial space. Majestic and grand. No matter how the enemies attack, the vast blood sea can dissipate a lot of power, and the energy reserve is even higher than Luo Feng's current one, with frightening energy recovery. Even if 100 ancestors join hands, they can't pose a threat. This is the power of a pure, primordial life Tao Lord. But the downside is, the size is too large, moving very slowly, and it's impossible to mobilize all the power to kill the enemy. Against enemies, only part of the blood sea can be mobilized. My primordial life and death Tao seeks absolute control over every portion of power. To mobilize all the power to confront the enemy with a single thought. Luo Feng pondered. On the basis of absolute control, the current energy reserve is already at the limit. Any larger, and it would begin to lose control. No need to comprehend a pure, primordial life Tao, just comprehending this form of life power feels not difficult. Luo Feng was quite interested and began to analyze and study it. In the origin continent origin world. in an ancient cave mansion in Huyang City. A tall, burly man opened his eyes in a daze, looking around. This was the appearance of his family's cave mansion when he was young. Didn't I die? Died at the hands of Sang Shuiyun. Shang Qianyang murmured to himself. Back then, he used his life to confirm that Sang Shuiyun's true identity was Divine Monarch Shuiyun, and also left a karmic tracing order for the Marquis of Zhujiang's side, to ensure the tracking of Divine Monarch Shuiyun. How am I still alive? Reincarnated? No, even among the Marquis in the primal chaos realm, only a very few can reincarnate and still retain memory. Shang Qianyang appeared slightly confused. Brother Shang. A voice sounded. Shang Qianyang looked to his side, and a black-cloaked, black-haired man appeared there. However, there was a pair of dark golden sharp horns on his forehead, slightly altered in appearance. It was exactly how Luo Feng looked when he initially crossed the Samsara Channel and first arrived at the land of origin. Brother Luo He. Shang Qianyang immediately recognized his friend, but that brother Luo He before him was vastly different from the one in his memory. That invisible aura even surpassed the mysteries of the operation of the heaven and earth rules. As an artifact refining master, in his perception, the aura of his friend Brother Luo He was higher and more profound than heaven and earth. Brother Luo He, what's going on? I remember, I died. Shang Qianyang looked at Luo Feng. You indeed died, you have been dead for 10,000 epochs. Luo Feng said with a smile, I fished you out from the river of time and space, from a past timeline, and brought you to the present, extending your life. Shang Qianyang was a bit dazed. The river of time and space. Fished out from a past timeline? I know there are 125 lives you cared about the most that have passed away. I have also resurrected them one by one. Luo Feng smiled as he pointed toward a garden in the cave mansion. In the open area of the garden, over 100 figures appeared out of thin air, each slightly dazed, looking around curiously. Shang Qianyang looked on in disbelief at those 125 figures. There was his wife, his young children, parents who had long since passed, the elder brother who took care of him, companions who lived and died with him, fellow Taoists who researched artifact refining with him, the most fond and regrettable disciple. Throughout his long life, those regretful existences, each came back to life. He once felt that the world was vast, yet he walked alone between heaven and earth. At this moment, intense emotions filled his heart, and he even felt a bit apprehensive. Isn't this an illusory realm? Shang Qianyang worriedly thought that this might be a grand illusion, having once been deceived by Dream Flower Tower Master through an illusory realm. Qianyang. A distant woman saw Shang Qianyang and called out excitedly. Hearing this familiar voice, Shang Qianyang's eyes suddenly became moist. Go ahead. Luo Feng smiled, good to reunite with family and friends. With that, Luo Feng's figure disappeared without a trace. At that moment, Shang Qianyang realized that his friend Luo He, whom he met in Huyang City, must have become an immensely great being, beyond what he could imagine. Luo Feng remained hidden, no longer disturbing them. Watching Shang Qianyang and his friends and family reunite with excitement, he couldn't help but smile. The meaning of resurrection lies right before the eyes. Brother Shang, my only friend during the eternal true God stage. Enjoy these days well. In the future, there will be more matters to trouble you with. Luo Feng watched from a distance, having a great admiration for Shang Qianyang's character. Shang Qianyang had compassion for the weak and sacrificed his life for all beings. With this virtue, Luo Feng decided to give Shang Qianyang a position in the future management of the factions on the Origin continent. The core of the Origin continent factions includes Morosa, Mountain Sitting Guest, and Master Emperor Chu, along with other various management personnel such as Emperor Qing, Emperor Chu Yu, Mo Yu Qingyang, Shang Qianyang, and others. Land of Origin, Council Hall. Around the Dark Realm Crystal Round Table, 8 lords, Yuan, Jin, Wulan, Minghuang, Nai Jiyu, Starlight, Mo Man, and Luo Feng, were already seated. When reclaiming territories, did everyone encounter trouble? Yuan asked. No, Wulan shook his head. Just a word, and they willingly retreated. Jin grinned. Starlight frowned and said, I am currently pursuing Mogus. During our conflict with the innate primordial camp, Mogus devoured the souls of more than 6 million source worlds. And that's him conserving food. He begged for mercy from me. I ignored him and continued the pursuit. As of now, I've eliminated 89% of his power. Mogus. Hatred flickered in Yuan's eyes. I really want to destroy him completely. Jin was rather unwilling. Luo Feng's expression was also grave. In the infinite primordial space, there are more than 200 ancestor-level entities. Among them, Mogus is one of the top-tier beings, an undying and immortal entity adept in soul power. In terms of threat and destructiveness, he surpasses more than half of the cultivator lords. Before Starlight was born, no one could threaten him in the slightest. He truly did as he pleased. He didn't involve himself in other disputes, nor did he require any other resources, needing only one type of resource, a massive amount of souls. He excelled in soul power, and he could hide within countless life forms in the infinite primordial space, never to be killed or eradicated completely. The innate primordial camp couldn't deal with Mogus, rather, they recruited him, actively providing a certain amount of innate primordial life for him to devour. In the infinite primordial space, in terms of the number of creatures, there were many innate primordial lives, but even more cultivators in source worlds. Within the braided cage, the cultivators exhibited extraordinary wisdom, and their soul's essence was quite exquisite, also being one of Mogus's favorite delicacies. However, the cultivator camp absolutely prohibited Mogus from devouring countless cultivator souls. Once he acted, the cultivators would pursue him at any cost. In the expanse outside the cultivator territory, those source worlds had long been ravaged by some ancestors, with few creatures being nurtured. In contrast, in the cultivator territory's 3,600 world groups, the endless source worlds housed a vast number of cultivators, something that had long whetted Mogus's appetite. This time, with the eruption of war between the two camps, Starlight's avatar had to confront the innate primordial camp directly, and Mogus immediately infiltrated, devouring one source world after another. He devoured to his heart's content. The moment the war ended, Starlight Lord began the pursuit. In all space-time, pursuing in all dimensions. Any place hiding Mogus's power would be attacked. His power can merge into countless weaker creatures. Yuan shook his head. Only Starlight, observing past and future, can locate countless traces of his lurking. This time, I plan to eradicate at least 99% of him, keeping him in a prolonged recovery period, so he never dares to come to our cultivator territory again. Starlight Lord spoke coldly. He dared only claim to eradicate 99%. As an undying and immortal entity, the more minuscule remnants become increasingly hard to eradicate as time goes on. Unless one day, all life forms across all source worlds, all high-level, world-level primordial life are eradicated, rendering Mogus devoid of any avatars, there's hope to eradicate him completely. His body is composed of soul power, Yuan said. Once 99% is eradicated, recovery will be exceedingly slow. Before Starlight became a lord, we could do nothing about Mogus, Wulan sighed. That period was truly terrible. For a time, the cultivator camp could only negotiate with Mogus. Only after Starlight became a lord did they have the confidence to pursue him. With Mogus being undying and immortal, there's no other way but to hurt him, making him never dare to venture into our cultivator territory again. Yuan said, have other lords encountered trouble? I have also encountered some trouble, Lord Mo Man spoke. The Lotus Prison Mountain Master has completely entrenched himself. I can do nothing against him. Lotus Prison Mountain Master? Everyone present frowned slightly. Those familiar with history would know. The cultivator camp was initially very weak before gradually expanding its territories. The present 3,600 world groups had a region once known as the Lotus Prison Cluster, where the Lotus Prison Mountain Master was deeply rooted over eons, completely dominating that world group, and he and his kin freely consumed the source world origins. Later, the cultivator camp expelled them. A spacetime net established over the scope of the 3,600 world groups deterred any ancestors from trespassing. Seizing the chance while the two great camps were at war, the Lotus Prison Mountain Master came back. Lord Mo Man shook his head. Though I can suppress him, I cannot defeat him. I'll go with you, Yuan said. With Brother Yuan's help, he will surely flee in panic, Mo Man nodded. The Lotus Prison Mountain Master, a being comparable to the Infinite Ancestor and Silent Extinction Ancestor, although not achieving undying and immortal status. Cultivator's 7 lords had tried before to kill him, but to no avail. Barring Yuan, when the other lords besieged, the Lotus Prison Mountain Master can root himself there, enduring all attacks. Only Yuan's formation considerably restrains the Lotus Prison Mountain Master, preventing him from borrowing substantial power from the primordial space. When facing Yuan, the only option for the Lotus Prison Mountain Master is to flee. Brother Luo Feng, is your true body constantly in the Blood Crane territory? Jin asked, would that weak force, the Blood Crane territory, dare to tangle with our cultivator camp? Among the more than 200 ancestor-level entities in the infinite primordial space, strength varies, and simply having a seat in the land of eternity only signifies undying and immortal. It does not necessarily equate to strength. Truly powerful entities number only a little over 30. Especially those who disdain to join the innate primordial camp and dare to face numerous dangers alone, they all have enough confidence. Mogus can barely rank in the top 10 in the infinite primordial space in terms of strength. The Lotus Prison Mountain Master can also rank in the top 30. The 3 from the Blood Crane territory are far inferior in comparison. Don't underestimate the Blood Crane territory. The Blood Lord, Crane Lord, and Shadow Lord of the Blood Crane territory have extremely strong survival abilities. When the 3 of them team up, they can be quite troublesome, Yuan said with a smile. Once they encounter trouble, they will hide within the mysterious land of Blood Crane territory, using the advantage of the terrain, making them more troublesome than the Lotus Prison Mountain Master. Only when the 3 lords of the Blood Crane territory join forces within the range of the mysterious land do they dare to say they are more troublesome than the Lotus Prison Mountain Master. Without the mysterious land, the 3 from the Blood Crane territory are significantly weaker. Brother Luo Feng, do you need help? Ming Huang asked. No need. Luo Feng smiled, I am somehow destined with this Blood Crane territory. I am somewhat confident that I can refine this mysterious land. The 7 lords all stared at Luo Feng. Refining a mysterious land? Are you confident? Jin couldn't help but ask, his eyes full of envy. Brother Luo Feng, you've just become a lord, right? Wulan said, I've been searching for so long in the infinite primordial space, and I haven't found a suitable mysterious land for myself. Ming Huang, Nai Ji Yu, and the others all had complex feelings. Even as lords, they also desire to control a mysterious land. Firstly, to utilize part of the mysterious land power to enhance themselves, gaining some strength. Secondly, within the boundaries of the mysterious land, their strength will be extremely strong. Among us 8 lords, only Yuan and Starlight each control a mysterious land, Nai Ji Yu sighed. Luo Feng, you've just broken through to Lord, and you've found a mysterious land you can refine. I didn't expect myself to be so compatible with the Blood Crane territory either, Luo Feng laughed. Starlight laughed beside him. When I first comprehended the second kind of primordial level Tao, I was fortunate to discover the mysterious land, Time Star. Time Star is the smallest known mysterious land, even smaller than the Council Hall. I've been to Time Star once. It's really too small. When I sit there, I occupy 1/10 of the Time Star's area, Jin said. This Time Star is always drifting through different timelines, drifting to the past, drifting to the future. Its ability to go to the past and future is still inferior to mine, Starlight said with a faint smile. However, it is indestructible. It enhances some of my protective means. Mysterious lands generally integrate several kinds of highest-level powers, and there are always those we are not skilled in, Yuan said, so once refined, using part of the mysterious land's power is always beneficial to oneself. Luo Feng nodded. Luo Feng, how long do you estimate to refine it? Yuan asked. I estimate several epochs, Luo Feng said. So fast. The 7 lords were a bit surprised. They remembered how Luo Feng used the power-breaking technique, understanding the primordial life and death Tao in such a short time within the braided cage. Now that he has become a lord, refining a mysterious land in several epochs was something they could comprehend. In the blink of an eye, 3 epochs had passed. Yuan and Lord Mo Man cooperated once again to expel the formidable Lotus Prison Mountain Master. To the Lotus Prison Mountain Master, the former Lotus Prison Cluster was his home, surrounded by countless source worlds, which were the food for his race, but the cultivator camp was too dominating, not allowing him to stay in this area. Starlight Lord continued to pursue the hidden power of Mogus across all times and spaces. Deep within the Blood Crane territory, Luo Feng sat cross-legged in the endless Blood Sea, with the Blood Lord, Crane Lord, and Shadow Lord frequently coming to observe, yet they were unable to stop Luo Feng's comprehension of the Blood Crane territory origin. This is the highest level power, blood power. Luo Feng initially understood 70 to 80% upon first contemplating it, but to completely master this type of highest level life force, even with Luo Feng's comprehension and insight, it still took more than 3 epochs. The difference between blood power and the primordial life and death Tao is indeed significant. At this moment, Luo Feng fully understood how vast the difference was between highest level power and the Tao of the highest level. With blood power, one can form a physical body, kill enemies, form domains, and restore the power of companions, among other means. The body formed by blood power is of Blood Sea appearance, but the Blood Sea is not large, with an energy reserve about 60% that of Luo Feng's. Only those who comprehend the primordial life Tao and create the most suitable life form according to it can possess the largest life form in the infinite primordial space. Just one, blood power, falls short in energy reserve compared to Luo Feng. Its energy reserve is 60% of Luo Feng's, its movement speed much slower than Luo Feng's, its life spirituality at 80% of Luo Feng's power, its recovery ability at 50%, its ability to kill enemies only at 30% of Luo Feng's. You must know, Luo Feng's capability to kill enemies is only at an average level among lords, aside from the Great Destruction technique. The ability of blood power to kill enemies at only 30% would be considered quite mediocre among ancestors. This type of blood power would only weaken Luo Feng. This is why the cultivator lords do not cultivate same category highest level powers. Because they master the Tao of the same category, a singular type of power is meaningless to them. And other category highest level powers, the lords cannot comprehend. After all, it's not their strong suit. Having comprehended blood power, the next step is to refine the Blood Crane territory origin. Luo Feng was quite looking forward to it, as this was the only help blood power could provide him. The origin of the mysterious land, Blood Crane territory, is vast beyond compare, its mystery surpassing even the source world origin. Luo Feng has only mastered one kind of power, the blood power, so the refinement process is quite slow. Using the blood power as a guide, follow the clues and delve deeper gradually. Facing the immeasurably vast origin, it's impossible to rely on luck to go deeper. Only by thoroughly understanding the method of origin combination can one realize how to refine. It's the only way to achieve, step-by-step, gradual advancement. The 3 lords of Blood Crane territory felt a tremor in their hearts. He's refining the Blood Crane territory origin. He has begun refining. They all mastered a form of the highest level power compatible with Blood Crane territory, and over the endless years, they had tried refining it time and again. Although they hadn't succeeded, they were extremely familiar with the origin, and any trace of change in the Blood Crane territory origin could not escape them. Refining the origin of a mysterious land is inherently difficult. The combination of 3 types of highest level powers into an origin is immensely mysterious and vast. Though we failed to refine it, he certainly will not succeed. The Blood Lord, Crane Lord, and Shadow Lord sensed the refinement progress, but their hearts were filled with apprehension. They couldn't accept the result of Cultivator Lord Luo Feng refining Blood Crane territory origin, because after all, this was their homeland. Moreover, Blood Crane territory was the most compatible mysterious land for them. Looking across the infinite primordial space, trying to find another mysterious land that melded completely with their highest level of power? It simply doesn't exist. The Cultivator Lord, due to possessing the Tao, is able to discern the most suitable power through a relatively compatible mysterious land. But those ancestors cannot, so they mostly refine the mysterious land of their homeland. His refinement progress is still advancing. The Blood Lord's expression was solemn. We encountered obstacles and bottlenecks. How has he not encountered any bottleneck? The Crane Lord could not believe it. The Shadow Lord remained silent since it was he who brought Luophone here. Blood Crane territory held an exceedingly special significance for the three of them. On one hand, it is their birthplace where they can wield part of the Blood Sea power, making them the strongest. They can face any formidable enemy with confidence. Here, new lineages can continually be born, making the entire clan even larger. Perhaps in the future, a fourth or fifth ancestor level could emerge. On the other hand, the Blood Crane territory is also their greatest hope for undying and undying. For the already undying cultivator lord, refining a mysterious land could enhance their capability a bit, making themselves more comprehensive, which is like adding brilliance to perfection. But for the ancestor level, it is a change of fate. Without reaching undying, one remains a pawn. Only with undying can one become an everlasting player in the infinite primordial space. Now, the greatest hope for their undying is on the brink of vanishing. How can they not be anxious? His refinement progress has already far surpassed mine initially. The Blood Lord sensed it. Moreover, he has never encountered a bottleneck, and his refining is very smooth. The Crane Lord said, I've long heard that the comprehension of cultivator lords is terrifying, and now I have witnessed it. Actually, among the 8 lords in the cultivator camp, only Luophone and Starlight use the power-breaking technique. Their comprehension and insight astonish the other 6 lords. Understanding the primordial level Tao under the braided cage. What kind of comprehension is this? The compatibility of Blood Crane territory with Luophone, refining over a little over 3 epochs, is very normal. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, 5 days passed. The Blood Lord, Crane Lord, and Shadow Lord constantly monitored the refining progress. During these 5 days, Luophone continued refining without meeting any bottlenecks. His refining progress has already exceeded 80%. The Blood Lord gazed expressionlessly at his 2 companions, though unwilling to admit it. The fact is clear. Our homeland, Blood Crane territory, is about to be refined by him. It's my fault, my fault. The Shadow Lord's massive shadow twisted and roared with great reluctance. Previously, only Yuan and Starlight in the cultivator camp had refined a mysterious land, so it was evident that even for a cultivator lord, refining a mysterious land is exceptionally challenging. The Shadow Lord couldn't foresee that Luophone might refine the Blood Crane territory. The Blood Lord and Crane Lord cast a cold glance at the Shadow Lord. The greatest hope for undying has been cut off. The hope for a flourishing clan has been extinguished. The homeland and stronghold are gone. How could they possibly forgive this companion? It's important to know that the invasion of the cultivated territory was the Shadow Lord's sole decision. They had once advised against provoking the 3 major camps, but the Shadow Lord simply wouldn't listen. This incident has already driven a wedge between the 3 lords. We must leave. The Blood Lord stated, once Luophone completely refines the Blood Crane territory, within it, his power will be unmatched. He will be able to harness the entire Blood Crane territory's power, then we, the 3 of us, won't be able to leave even if we want. The power of the entire Blood Crane territory is stronger than even Luophone himself. Where should we go? The Shadow Lord asked. No matter where, we must first migrate out of the range of Blood Crane territory. The Blood Lord spoke, we'll move the clan together. The Crane Lord responded. Migrating from their homeland, who would wish it, who could accept it? But that is the reality, and there is no choice. The 3 lords of Blood Crane territory immediately took action, using the Shadow Lord's transportation ability to meet with those world-level primordials. Blood Crane territory is about to be refined by cultivator Luophone. This is a calamity for our Blood Crane territory clan, leaving us no choice but to migrate. Staying in Blood Crane territory would mean being enslaved by Luophone, becoming servants of the cultivator camp. Do you wish to stay here or leave with us? The 3 lords of Blood Crane territory communicated to those world-level primordials. Though this news bewildered the world-level primordials, the Blood Crane territory clan's world-level primordials swiftly made their choice. We are willing to leave. We are willing to follow the three lords. These world-level primordials knew well that going to the cultivator camp meant becoming servants. The most trusted within the cultivator camp are always cultivator world-level primordials, and these innate primordials would never rise in status. The Blood Lord, Crane Lord, and Shadow Lord gathered their world-level primordials under command, and along the way, took many high-level primordial life forms as well. What? The Blood Crane territory is about to be refined by the Cultivator Lord? The entire clan is to migrate? Why didn't they take me? Where are the three lords? Why won't they take us? The vast endless blood sea, with too many high-level primordial life forms scattered across it, meant the three lords only took the world-level primordial along their way, while picking up most high-level primordial life forms as a side task, unwilling to waste any more time. High-level primordial life forms are utterly inconspicuous in the entire infinite primordial space. Three lords, take us with you. We want to leave too. The many forgotten high-level primordial life forms were extremely anxious. Their desperation was futile, for in the eyes of the three lords of Blood Crane territory, these high-level primordial life forms were but a number. Rumble tilde tilde tilde. As Luophone continued his refining, the tumultuous ocean of Blood Crane territory grew increasingly agitated. We must leave quickly. Three enormous figures swiftly flew out of the Blood Crane territory range, daring not to linger, as Luophone's refining had already surpassed 90%, accelerating as it progressed. Luophone's refining speed has increased. The Blood Lord, Crane Lord, and Shadow Lord looked toward the surging endless blood sea, which was the homeland that had nurtured them. Unfortunately, this mysterious land would soon be refined, soon welcoming its new master. Brother, where do we go now? Should we seek a territory to occupy or join the innate primordial camp? Crane Lord inquired. The innate primordial camp had always been actively recruiting various forces. In the innate primordial camp's view, as long as one is born a primordial life, they should be part of them. Joining any force requires careful consideration. Let's first temporarily reside in the Black River World Group, where the resources are barely sufficient, Blood Lord suggested. Crane Lord agreed, and Shadow Lord dared not speak further. After causing a great disaster, Shadow Lord's character had changed significantly. The three lords immediately set off, heading toward the distant, secluded Black River World Group, a region even further from the cultivator territory. Asterisk 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 asterisk. As the three lords of Blood Crane territory migrated with their entire clan, the blood sea of the mysterious land, Blood Crane territory, surged violently. The remaining high-level primordial life forms trembled in fear, afraid of being obliterated by the waves. Blood Crane territory is going to be refined. It's the cultivator Lord, Luophone. In the infinite primordial space, many ancient beings with powerful observation methods remotely observed the endless blood sea and the black-clad, black-haired man sitting cross-legged deep within it. Among the 8 lords of the cultivator camp, this newly breakthrough Lord Luophone can refine a mysterious land so quickly. The power of Blood Crane territory includes blood power, undying power, shadow power, all protective methods. This Lord Luophone already had a strong protective ability, and by refining this mysterious land, receiving part of its power, his protective capability should enhance further. Fortunately, his specialty is just protective power. Some ancient beings were quite relieved. No matter how strong the protection, it's just a survival ability. The cultivator lords were already undying and undying, a bit more survival power is acceptable to other ancient beings. At least for now, Lord Luophone's deterrence doesn't seem too strong. But the once turbulent endless blood sea suddenly returned to calm. At the center of the calm, vast blood sea, Luophone sat cross-legged on the surface, with a blood-colored robe naturally forming on his body. Calm now. Blood Crane territory has calmed down. In the endless blood sea, those forgotten high-level primordial life forms wanted to try flying outward, but their strength was too weak and their flight too slow. Previously, during raids in the cultivator territory, it was also the lords who led them. A calm, unwavering blood sea. Yet it seemed solidified. Those high-level primordial life forms couldn't even fly, nor budge the blood wave an inch. Luo Feng slowly opened his eyes. Is this the blood crane territory origin? Luo Feng had fully refined it, and the primordial life and death Tao was a part of his life, just as blood crane territory origin was too. World origin power can only be used within the source world. But the origin power of the mysterious land can be borrowed from even the most distant places. Within blood crane territory's range, I can at least match the joint force of 3 or 4 lords. Luo Feng sensed slightly, and the energy reserve of the mysterious land endless blood sea alone surpassed any life form. No life can compare with the energy reserves of the mysterious land. Like the land of origin, it effortlessly supplies the cultivator camp, including the 8 lords, with energy. The blood crane territory can easily supply the blood crane territory clan. Swoosh! With a single thought, Luo Feng moved over 7.5 billion remaining high-level primordial life forms within blood crane territory to his side. Dense with high-level primordial life forms, they were all from the blood crane territory clan. At this moment, looking at the towering, majestic cultivator lord in the distance clad in a blood-colored robe, they instinctively bowed down. Hail to the great Lord Luo Feng! These high-level primordial life forms were extremely respectful. For those weak high-level primordial beings, whether it be ancestor or cultivator lord, they were great beings that couldn't be resisted. Are you willing to submit to me? Luo Feng's booming voice resonated in the heart of every high-level primordial life form. We are willing. The forgotten 7.5 billion plus high-level primordial life forms of the Blood Crane Territory clan were all respectful, with not a single one resisting. The innate primordial life forms once captured by the cultivator camp still carried some pride. They thought the innate primordial camp could win and save them. But the Blood Crane Territory clan had no pride before Luo Feng, as even Blood Crane Territory had been refined and controlled, and their 3 ancestors had already fled in disgrace. Good. Luo Feng looked down, nodding gently. At this moment, he had gained over 7.5 billion high-level primordial life form servants under his command. The high-level primordial beings of the Blood Crane Territory, all prostrated, suddenly felt a power infiltrate their bodies, merging into the surface of their life cores, forming mysterious secret patterns. They could sense, these secret patterns were countless times more mysterious than their own bloodlines. Once activated, their life cores would be obliterated. The life core has been refined. The high-level primordial beings of the Blood Crane Territory understood. Among them, many avatars had followed the Shadow Lord to the Cultivator Territory. During their years in the Cultivator Territory, they had long heard that in the Cultivator camp, all captured high-level primordials and world-level primordials would have their life course refined, never able to rebel or betray. They also knew that only by having their life course refined could the Cultivator camp dare to heavily utilize them. We survived. The Blood Crane Territory beings breathed a sigh of relief, fearing most that this Cultivator Lord would look down on them and directly annihilate them. From now on, I will steer the entire Blood Crane Territory to the Cultivator Territory. Luo Feng's voice was mighty and resonant, echoing throughout the Blood Crane Territory. We're going to the Cultivator Territory. The Blood Crane Territory beings understood that their entire homeland was about to be migrated. Rumble. The vast and mighty Blood Crane Territory began to fly slowly. Then, shadow power spread in all directions, allowing the entire Blood Crane Territory to make short-distance space-time traversals. Too slow. Steering the Blood Crane Territory, Luo Feng gently shook his head. The Blood Crane Territory is overly massive, and even though it contains shadow power, skilled at traveling, its ultimate migration speed is still much slower than world-level primordials. The Blood Crane Territory's short-distance space-time traversal covered only small distances each time. Even after 100 traversals, it couldn't match Luo Feng's single step. At this speed, reaching the Cultivator Territory and the Dark World Group is estimated to take about 10 eras. Luo Feng calculated and felt a bit speechless. As a Cultivator Lord, even not being skilled at traveling, it only took him over 100 days to arrive from the Cultivator Territory. Who would have thought that migrating the entire Blood Crane Territory would take 10 eras? It's already considered good luck. Some mysterious lands cannot be migrated at all. Luo Feng knew this point. Mysterious lands each have their peculiarities. Some are very adept at moving, like Starlight, Time Star, which can go wherever it pleases, often drifting across different timelines. Some cannot move at all, like the Land of Eternity and Abyss of Destruction and other special places. Places like the Land of Origin and Blood Crane Territory are relatively normal mysterious lands that can move, though their speed is very slow. Phew. Luo Feng left an avatar to steer the Blood Crane Territory while his main battle avatar instantly departed. The cultivated territory still had many affairs, plus the Blood Crane Territory possessed almost limitless energy with a single thought it could gather into his main battle avatar. Moreover, Luo Feng believed few would be foolish enough to come to the Blood Crane Territory to deal with him. In the outside world, in terms of protective ability, he was weaker than some existences like Lord Wulan. But in the Blood Crane Territory? Even with 100 ancestral beings gathered, Luo Feng was not afraid. Just the energy contained in the Blood Crane Territory allowed Luo Feng to repeatedly unleash Origin Great Destruction. Luo Feng's main battle avatar wore a blood-colored robe. Luo Feng was rapidly traveling, and although he was getting further from the Blood Crane Territory, since it had been refined, the Blood Crane Territory origin was part of his life, constantly allowing the Blood Crane Territorial origin to empower him. This empowering force was the fusion of blood power, undying power, shadow power into the blood sea power. The fusion of these three highest level powers, even when calling upon only a portion, Luo Feng already found it immensely beneficial. Impressive! Luo Feng, donned in a blood-colored robe, harnessed the blood sea power, able to remotely sense shadow across vast areas with a single thought. Wherever there were tangible matters, there was a corresponding shadow. Shadow power, omnipresent. Although Luo Feng was merely borrowing it, the distance of shadow traversal was relatively limited, but it was already much faster than before, making him seem like a phantom, repeatedly traversing distant space-time. Is my travel speed now approaching the median among the cultivator lords? Luo Feng pondered. It is thrice the speed it used to be. Previously, Luo Feng's travel speed was just a bit faster than Wulan. Now he could surpass both Wulan and Nai and was getting close to Jin, likely achieving 50 to 60% of Yuan. As for Starlight, Mo Man, and Ming Huang, their speed was much faster than Luo Feng's at this moment. In the vast infinite primordial space, their speeds are ranked at the forefront. In terms of speed, I am close to the median level among the cultivator lords. Compared to those ancestors, I am considered upper level. Luo Feng was quite satisfied with his current speed. The larger the body, the greater the obstacles when traversing space-time. Given his physique, this speed was already remarkable, thanks to the unique power of the Blood Crane Territory. My protective ability has also improved significantly. Luo Feng could sense that the Blood Sea power significantly enhanced his protective abilities. After all, it encompassed three types of power, all focused on protection. As for the aspect of life, Luo Feng was indifferent. Ultimately, it could not rival his primordial life and death Dao. However, the undying power allowed his physical body to possess some immortal characteristics, greatly increasing its resilience. The shadow power gave Luo Feng's body a partial shadow trait, causing many of the enemy's powers to pass through as if through shadows, with only a fraction of 3 to 5 out of 10 actually affecting Luo Feng. Previously, Luo Feng could withstand the joint attack of 34 ancestors, and now he felt he could withstand the assault from 60 to 70 of them without much issue. Of course, compared to Wulan, who could easily withstand any attack from the ancestors, there was still a gap. The direction I'm good at, I'm becoming better, Luo Feng smiled, but the means to defeat opponents hasn't advanced much. In just 39 days, Luo Feng's main battle avatar returned to the Dark World group. Land of Origin World. Finally, it's peaceful. Everything Luo Feng needed to do in his territory was completed. As for the reconstruction of the fallen territory, that was the task of the world-level primordial, high-level primordial, and numerous servants under his command. Of the 3,600 world groups, only 100 or so occupied by the Ice Peak Alliance have yet to be recovered. The strength of the Ice Peak Alliance is comparable to the innate primordial camp, and with the presence of 12, undying and undying, they are somewhat more troublesome than the innate primordial camp. Luo Feng slightly frowned. Ice Peak Alliance is a relatively loose alliance, but the Land of Eternity has only 28 seats and Ice Peak Alliance holds 12 of them. The ancestors of the innate primordial camp fear death, but the Ice Peak Alliance does not. It's best to resolve this through negotiations, Luo Feng thought. Having just ended a war, the cultivator camp was unwilling to easily go to war with Ice Peak Alliance. The cost of war would be significant. Negotiations were handled by Yuan. Land of Origin is built quite well. Luo Feng glanced at his homeland, which had undergone tremendous changes in just over 3 epochs. The entire continent was 100 times more vast than before and had only one absolutely unified nation, the Galaxy Divine Country. The fame of Galaxy Divine Country spread throughout the Land of Origin, even influencing 10,000 primordial universes. In the past, the primordial cosmos region could not discuss much information about the Land of Origin. But after Luo Feng refined the source world, he reset the rules. All 10,000 primordial universes could reach true God of void space and thereby pass through the Samsara channel to arrive at the Land of Origin, which was the only passageway. The core of the Galaxy Divine Country was Galaxy Capital City, a massive urban center formed from merging Huyang City and Galaxy Capital and then enormously expanded. Galaxy Capital City was comparable in scale to a primal chaos prefecture. Various factions wanted to establish roots here, wishing to be closer to the great Lord Luo Feng. The entire Galaxy Divine Country was governed by 3 factions jointly. At the top were the 9 great governors, namely Xuxin, Luo Ping, Shimor, Primordial Ancestor, Primal Chaos City Lord, Giant Axe, Morosa, Mountain Sitting Guest, Emperor Chu. Actually, the position of Shimor originally belonged to Luo Hai. But Luo Hai himself was unwilling to take it on, thinking the affairs were too numerous. Shimor was one of the lives created by Luo Feng amongst many tribes and had significant influence in Luo Feng's faction. Luo Hai declined the role, so Shimor took over. There was also controversy regarding the Giant Axe position. Hong, as Luo Feng's elder brother, held a high status in the primordial universe human clan over long ages. Zhenyan was Luo Feng's teacher. Hong and Zhenyan both had strong competitive power, but Hong was a disciple of the Giant Axe, supporting him in taking the highest governor role. Zhenyan also admired and respected Giant Axe and strongly supported him. Giant Axe had great influence in the higher echelons of the primordial universe human clan, and he eventually became one of the 9 highest governors. Even if the 9 governors had weaker strength, they possessed the governor order personally refined by Luo Feng, which contained power to protect their physical bodies and souls, granting them Divine Emperor Ultimate Realm's strength. In the environment with power restrictions in the Land of Origin, they could handle any danger. Beneath the 9 governors were 72 vice-governors, a total of 81 individuals personally reviewed and confirmed by Lord Luo Feng. Below that, Luo Feng didn't intervene. Galaxy Capital City held the cave mansions of the many godly kings and divine emperors, as well as the larger cave mansions of the vice-governors and governors. At the city's center was the Lord Luo Feng's cave mansion. At last, there's time to perfect this inheritance. After returning from Blood Crane territory half an era ago, Luo Feng created a complete inheritance, Primordial Life and Death Tao, which included numerous chapters like Spiritual Fire, Immortal Body, Primordial Force, Life Origin, among others. It was a legacy extending from the most basic Divine King stage to the Lord level. The other 7 lords left their legacies in the Land of Origin. Other lords could freely access them. Inheritances can be read to acquire knowledge, but cannot be truly learned. Just as Luo Feng pursued the primordial blade path focusing on destruction, Jin's primordial destruction path also emphasized destruction, but their spiritual wills were entirely different and the paths they followed were completely distinct. In many aspects, they even were incompatible. When they first became lords, Jin was fervently enthusiastic towards Luo Feng, but later felt Luo Feng's hostility towards tribulation cultivators, causing Jin to be less enthusiastic towards Luo Feng and never mention the matter of jointly venturing to the abyss of destruction. Luo Feng, I saw the inheritance you placed in the land of origin, Yuan transmitted with a smile. Once the territory is completely subdued, I'll definitely study your inheritance thoroughly. I've been busy refining Blood Crane territory, and only recently have I perfected the inheritance. Luo Feng transmitted back. By the way, Brother Yuan, did you visit the Ice Peak Alliance? I'm currently on the way to the Ice Peak Alliance, Yuan transmitted. Luo Feng understood. Hopefully, the negotiations will go smoothly, and the cultivator territory may be peacefully reclaimed. Yuan arrived at the fallen territories. Observing the surroundings, his expression turned cold. Throughout his long life, he had always dedicated himself to the cultivator camp. Among the lords, Yuan contributed the most in nurturing young cultivators. Now, seeing over 100 world groups plundered and many source world origins devoured, how could he be in a good mood? The Ice Peak camp and the innate primordial camp are essentially the same. They both are innate primordial, needing to plunder numerous resources, and many like to devour source world origins. Yuan thought. At the highest level of the Ice Peak camp, there are 12 undying and undying beings, who occasionally also like to taste the source world origin. Besides these 12, the Ice Peak camp has some ancestors joining too. These ancestors have not reached the undying and undying, so they enjoy devouring the source world origin even more. The innate primordial camp is the greatest enemy. The conflict with the Ice Peak camp is also very significant. Yuan understood this. As creatures emerging from the source world, there is an irreconcilable conflict with any life group that likes to devour source world origins. Only by becoming strong enough can all forces be deterred from devouring the source world. Yuan thought. Now, the 8th Lord, Luo Feng, has emerged, a lord mastering the power-breaking technique. In the future, a 9th Lord will emerge. Our cultivator camp will grow even stronger. Suppressing his fury, Yuan followed his senses straight to an ancestor-level being within this fallen territory. Whoosh! Wherever Yuan passed, rules operated, allowing him to cross infinite distances with each step, reaching a location in just a moment. Yuan, you are here. A warm voice sounded, welcoming a towering black figure enthusiastically. Yuan looked at the figure, a towering black figure clad in black scale armor, with a single eye burning with blood-red flame, looking quite fierce. But his smile was very bright. Wugu Ancestor. Yuan looked at him. The Wugu Ancestor, one of the 12 undying and undying beings of the Ice Peak camp, ranked in the top 5 in strength. If placed in the entire infinite primordial space, the Wugu Ancestor is also among the top 30, comparable to the Lotus Prison Mountain Master. I am here to discuss your occupation of over 100 world groups. Yuan said coldly. Our cultivator camp and your Ice Peak camp are considered allies. Yet you occupy our territories? Is this what allies do? Don't be anxious, knowing you were coming, the Ice Peak Ancestor has already convened the highest level, and later the Ice Peak Ancestor and others will incarnate to arrive. Wugu Ancestor said. The Ice Peak Ancestor is also the highest leader of the Ice Peak camp. He led the establishment of this alliance within a huge towering palace. Accompanied by the Wugu Ancestor, Yuan also sat there waiting. In just a moment, 11 figures all descended, indeed the incarnations of the other 11 undying and undying beings of the Ice Peak camp. All 12 gathering clearly shows their regard towards the cultivator camp. Brother Yuan, a warm voice sounded, from a presence towering like an ice mountain, his whole body composed of deep blue ice. Even just an incarnation could glimpse the terrifying power he possessed. The Ice Peak Ancestor is a presence with strength comparable to Yuan. He possesses a nearly Wulan, indestructible body with mastery over endless icy power. His methods to threaten enemies are stronger than Wulan's. Ice Peak. Yuan nodded. The Ice Peak Ancestor has lived far longer than Yuan. They once experienced a period of life-and-death friendships, when the cultivator camp had only Yuan as the sole lord. At that time, the Ice Peak Ancestor established the Ice Peak camp and warmly recruited Yuan, who did not join, yet it did not harm their friendship. However, with the continuous strength increase of the cultivator camp, the relationship between the two has changed. Brother Yuan. Yuan. The 12 beings of the Ice Peak camp were very familiar with Yuan. Yuan greeted them one by one, then looked at a grey-robed woman. Elder Sister Shoju. Yuan's eyes had a complex expression. It's been a long time. The grey-robed woman glanced at Yuan, nodding slightly. In a long-past era, the universally recognized strongest being in the entire infinite primordial space was this Shoju, who was solitary and withdrawn. Her friends were few, countable on fingers. Her best friend was the Ice Peak Ancestor. Her second best friend could be considered Yuan. When the Ice Peak Camp was founded, the Ice Peak Ancestor warmly invited, and Shoju joined. This made the entire Ice Peak Camp terrifyingly influential. Later, the Starlight Lord emerged. The Starlight Lord, who mastered 2 primordial level paths, was considered by many forces to be the strongest existing now. Some still believed Shoju to be the strongest. However, one thing was certain: if the top 2 were selected in the infinite primordial space, it would definitely be Starlight and Shoju. During the confrontation between the 2 major camps, the Starlight Lord and the Infinite Snake Ancestor's void techniques countered each other, with both only able to exert a portion of their strength. The Infinite Snake Ancestor, skilled in void power, also had the backing of the infinite world. His void capability far surpassed the mother of space-time. In one-on-one combat, he was not inferior to the Ice Peak Ancestor, Mogus, and others, but was completely suppressed by the Starlight Lord. Elder Sister Shoju, our cultivator camp and the Ice Peak camp have always been allies, yet the Ice Peak camp took advantage of our war with the innate primordial camp to invade over 100 world groups. Elder Sister Shoju, how do you think this should be handled? Yuan looked at Shoju. This minor matter, discuss it with Ice Peak. Shoju said, clearly indifferent to the disputes over these hundreds of world groups. Elder. Ice Peak Ancestor firmly grasped Yuan's hand. Sitting together, you know Sister Shoju's temperament. She wouldn't bother with these matters. Our Ice Peak camp and your cultivator camp are indeed allies, but you know, our Ice Peak camp is scattered internally, and it's difficult for me to completely manage them. When I learned they occupied hundreds of world groups, I immediately ordered a stop. But wanting them to give up the occupied world groups, it's difficult for me. Ice Peak Ancestor looked at Yuan. Yuan also knew that the Ice Peak camp was quite loose, with the 12 undying and undying entities each having their own interests. Perhaps only Shoju didn't care about these resources, as Shoju cared most about this close friend, Ice Peak Ancestor. Yuan was well aware of the friendship between Shoju and Ice Peak. For Ice Peak, Shoju would stop at nothing. 3,600 world groups. We cannot lose a single region in our cultivator territory. Yuan looked around. Everyone knows we've reclaimed all other invaded territories. It's only the 100+ world groups you've occupied remaining. Our cultivator lords will use the space-time net to hunt down all enemies within the territory. You dare? 3 identical-looking figures stood up, all glaring at Yuan. You dare to take action against us? Your cultivator camp is expanding. Is it wrong for us to occupy these 100+? These 3 identical-looking figures kept shouting angrily. After joining the Ice Peak camp, they loved attacking and occupying places the most. Nearly half of these 100+ world groups were occupied by them. Other undying and undying entities also opened their mouths to angrily reprimand, while some calmly watched. The 3 thieves of wind and thunder sea. Yuan looked at the 3 identical figures, sneering. Without the power of the Ice Peak camp, would you 3 thieves dare to occupy? In front of the cultivator camp, what are you? The 3 emperors of wind and thunder sea, weak in strength, ranked among the lower tier among ancestors. Yet due to mastering the characteristic of highest power, they were all undying and undying. The 3 relied on undying and undying, relying on the power of the Ice Peak camp, yet they loved causing trouble the most. In the land of eternity, all 3 were among the bottom ranks, so they banded together. Yuan. The 3 emperors of wind and thunder sea became furious hearing Yuan call them 3 thieves. Don't forget, one Mo man wiped out all 3 of you. Yuan sneered, indeed belittling these 3 thieves. Clearly weak in strength, yet always bouncing around. Lord Mo man once, in anger, struck, forcibly obliterating their bodies and seizing their weapons and treasures. But these three, no matter how much they were obliterated, they would still regain power. HMPH. The three emperors of Wind and Thunder Sea were infuriated, but they also knew Mo Man restrained the three the most. Starlight and Jin also possessed the strength to obliterate three bodies. Yuan, it's only 100+ world groups, why harm the friendship between us? Wugu ancestor spoke with a smile. It's you hurting the friendship. One word, you must return them. Yuan said, looking around. Among the highest level of the Ice Peak camp, 12 undying and undying entities, each had their thoughts. Among them, besides the 3 thieves of Wind and Thunder Sea who were quite weak, there were also those with extremely formidable strength. How about this? Ice Peak ancestor finally spoke, Yuan, both of our sides are allies. Our greatest enemy is the innate primordial camp. The Ice Peak camp and innate primordial camp needed almost the same resources. You know, the Ice Peak camp is quite dispersed, many matters are difficult for me to forcefully control. Ice Peak ancestor sighed, let's be considerate of each other, so Ice Peak camp will return more than half of the world groups. Retain 60 world groups, and I can appease internally. Around, a group of undying and undying entities also looked at Yuan. Yuan listened, then stood up. Not a single world group can be missing from our cultivator territory. Yuan's gaze swept over the 12 undying and undying entities. If you insist on occupation, then our cultivator camp will officially go to war with you. The faces of the 12 undying and undying entities from the Ice Peak camp all changed. War? Elder, you better think carefully. Ice Peak ancestor looked at him. Call me Yuan. Yuan looked at him, those occupying cultivator territory aren't qualified to be my brother. Ice Peak ancestor's face turned cold as well. Yuan, I've already conceded a step. Your cultivator camp wants war. We who are undying and undying will not fear. Very well. Yuan nodded lightly, but I warn you, once war begins, the battlefield won't be confined to this fallen territory. All territories of your Ice Peak camp will become targets of our cultivator camp. Dare to invade here, you must be prepared to be invaded back. What? Some undying and undying entities were startled. Counter-invasion? We in the Ice Peak camp would fear the battlefield expanding. Ice Peak ancestor sneered, these undying and undying entities don't much care about middle and lower tier death. Then wait for it. Yuan swept his gaze and disappeared with a step. The hall fell silent. The 12 undying and undying entities each had their thoughts. Are we really going to war? Ice Peak ancestor glanced around in anger. So this is your decision? Ice Peak ancestor said deeply, you all insist on occupying the 60 world groups with the most vital resources. The result is out, Yuan and their 8 lords are going to war with us. This episode is end here.